that there's this sense that like if you have amazing extracurriculars, um, that can kind of like overshadow the MCAT, and I'm sure that that could be the case. I'm not saying that won't, but you also don't want to put yourself in a disadvantage where you're not being looked at, your application's not being looked at because of the MCAT score, whatever the case may be, right? Like you don't want to put yourself in that situation, and that's why I always tell someone that, that yes, extracurricular is going to be super important, of course, right? Because that's really what's going to be the separating factor, right, from you and the other student applying. What else have you done, right? Besides obviously take this standardized exam and did well on it, which a lot of people can do. But what did you do differently, right? And so that's why I always say like they're equally as important. But like people shouldn't think that the extracurriculars can really overshadow the MCAT score, because unfortunately I think a lot of these schools have like cut off numbers, and you don't want to be in that situation. Um, I'm not sure what the average is now. I mean, I can probably look this up really quickly. Um, like MCAT, freaking. Let's see. Let's look at this together. Because I wasn't. I mean, when I applied, um, might have been a little different. So average MCAT score for medical school applicants 25, 26, 506, while the average score for enrollees is 511, 508, 513. Yeah, so you see this, and I'm not sure what the specific breakdown, and what is this best colleges? Is this reliable? Um, Average MCAT score is 500, right? So that's like right smack dab in the middle. Um, 506 is the average med school applicant, what they're scoring with. I mean, what they're applying with, right? And then for enrollees, so this is people that actually got accepted or enrolled in, not accepted, sorry, actually enrolled in a med school, right? So this is different than the 506, because these are just the people that applied. This is people that enrolled. So you can see it's high, and it's a little higher. I'm saying not high, but and then of course GPA, right? Not to mention that too. That's another pretty important factor that goes into the application. But I wanted to get on here and obviously answer that question, because people haven't asked me, but have more of a chance to like elaborate on what I mean by like each having its own weight in the application, right? So like as we can see what the average scores are for the applicants and stuff like that. Oh, sorry, I'm just gonna check something really quick. Sorry. Yeah, so these schools are probably looking at the numbers and weeding out, right, like lower numbers, whatever the case may be. And I'm sure like some people have like dream med schools and like these goals, right? So like that's why I always emphasize, and like I tell students, like you have to look at those things, right? Because that can be different for everyone. So like if I have a certain med school in mind and I really 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 want to go there, then I have to kind of look at what their numbers look like, so I can, you know if I realistically have a chance. I think that's what it really ultimately comes down to. Like what is it that you want to do, where you want to go. I know there's so many options out there. There's the MD schools, there's DO schools, there's international, right, Caribbean, like in Mexico, IMG, whatever. Like there's so many different options that exist. I think you have to look at what you want, right, and then go off of that with MCAT score and then GPA, of course. Usually 510 or higher. If you have a lower GPA, you want to tend to have a higher MCAT score, but you want to have exactly, for sure, exactly. Thanks for the message. And I agree, and I mostly made this conversation about the MCAT because I think I get asked about the MCAT more than anything, more than like GPA and extracurriculars too, actually. So these two things, right? And of course, as I mentioned here, I mean, it said it here, right? So like, let me show y'all. Like, they said it as well. So like, average overall GPA of applicants was 3.6, while those who enrolled had an average overall GPA of 3.79. So, I mean, that's pretty decent GPA, right? That's like people, those are good grades. Those are good grades. Yeah, we can see how it. Yeah, the average is 500. I mean, that's basically, you're scoring average if you get a 500, meaning, that, I mean, we all know what average means, but I mean, yeah, schools want better than average nowadays, right? And like you mentioned, usually 510 or higher is like what is like the recommended range or whatever, like or goal. 510 or above, right? To have like to not really limit yourself in options when it comes to like an MCAT score. And like you mentioned, like if you have a lower GPA, then you want to have a higher MCAT score, of course, so that you can prove that the academics aren't lacking. Like if you prove that you can score higher on the MCAT, of course, then you can kind of balance like having that lower GPA and justify that a little bit, right? But of course, the extracurriculars are gonna matter in that case too, right? For example, like in undergrad, your GPA was maybe a little lower than that. The application, in the application, you can talk more about like why that was the case. Maybe you had to work extra. Maybe you had, this super dope project that you were working on, and it took a little bit of time away from. I don't know. Whatever the case, that's what you can do with the application. That gives you that chance to talk about what were the things that you were doing as an undergrad, or whatever, and so that's where it all connect really comes together, right? Like your application is you, and that's how I put it. Like it's you are putting yourself out. Like you're gonna describe yourself the best way you can using those sections in the application, right? So like what I did was I created a theme, right, for my application, and I kind of carried that theme through my personal statement and through explaining what my extracurriculars were, and then my three most meaningful experiences and things like that, right? And like I knew that to I knew that I had a different story, and I wanted to make sure that schools knew that, right? But I also knew that when I was studying for the MCAT and things like that, like I knew that that was just as important, right? Because I didn't want to limit myself in terms of schools that were going to look at me, and giving myself the chance to be looked at. And unfortunately, that becomes the case, right? And I know it's harder, like it's easier said than done. I mean, I'm sorry, because I understand that we all have different situations, and sometimes we have to work, and we don't have like all this time to really study, but it's really an exam that you want to just take once. And that's the other thing that I try to advise people on. Like you want to study for this, and you want to go all out, and you want to take it once. I don't think that people should have the mindset of thinking about like I'm gonna try it, and then I'm gonna get a feel for it, and then I'm gonna take it again, or I'm gonna, if something goes. No, like don't start with that mindset. That should not be the mindset that someone starts off with. It should be, I'm gonna dominate this exam, and I'm gonna take it once, and that's it, and I'm gonna apply this one time, right? Like it's not like you should it's not you shouldn't think of it as a trial. Like you should not. At least that's what I think, right? Maybe someone would think something completely different, but I would say that you just want to experience that once, right? Just go all out, and then that's that's it. Hopefully it goes really good for you. AMC MSAR, definitely recommend gold standard. Yo, that's right. I had forgotten about that. Thank you for that. Double AMC has the MSAR, which has like all of like the medical school like up to date numbers, right? Is that correct? Um, exactly. Exactly. I love that. Positive mindset. Exactly, and that's what it is. And so that's why like that goes a long way. When I started studying for it, uh, I kind of started studying for it in that aspect, like where I was like, oh, I'll get a feel for it, but I wasn't getting anywhere. my scores weren't increased. Like I wasn't getting anywhere, and so like my cycle was a little different. I applied in the pandemic year, and I won't get too much into that, but I had my original test date canceled. Like um, I forget when the whole thing started, but my original test date was canceled. And I'm not gonna lie, like that might have kind of saved me a bit. And what I mean by that is because I was studying it that way. Oh, I'll try it, whatever. I don't know if I could really. No, it was bad. If I would have probably stuck to that original date, it wouldn't have probably been good. But after that, I was like, man, what am I like? No, like let's buckle down and let's get this. Like, I just want to do this once, and that's it, right? And that just changed everything for me. And that in like the next 2 3 months, I actually sat down for it, and that was it, right? So like that's the one advice, the biggest piece of advice probably that I'll have in terms of mindset going into it. But again, the biggest thing that I like just stress is please like don't underestimate the MCAT, and like don't think of it as like as a trial when you're starting to study for it, or like I'm gonna take it once and if it doesn't go, no, like please, because I know that there's so many people out there with so many amazing stories, so many great, like amazing extracurriculars, right? And then it just sucks to hear like I think it was my MCAT score. I have to try it again. Maybe I have to actually like increase my hours, whatever the case may be, of trying to having to take it. It is a difficult exam, and I understand that. I'm not saying that it's like a an easy exam by any means. Like please don't take it that way. It's I know how tough it is. It was brutal for me, um, but it's doable. And I want like when I tell people, I want people to understand that like it is a doable exam. We can all do it. It's just one of those. Um, yeah, so like that's a great question. Extracurriculars in terms of yeah, what people are doing out there for the application. I mean, I always hear like volunteering in hospitals, right, or like scribing, working in a hospital or in a clinical setting somehow. And that always, I think that you can never go wrong with that. I personally did that. I volunteered at a hospital for a bit. I also worked at a hospital. I worked as a research assistant at a hospital with doctors, but I also did research in a wet lab, um, in organic chemistry. So it really like, and believe it or not, I had some classmates who didn't really do any like actual clinical stuff, but they did like hard science or whatever it is, but the point is like someone was strong in something, right? And you want to do something because you're passionate about it, and then that'll really translate in the application, right? Like how you talk about it and how you describe it. Like I think the application readers will get a sense for that. Um, so like it has to be something that's obviously meaningful to you, right? Like not just to check boxes is what Irvin and I be saying sometimes. Like speak with students. You don't want to do it just for checking boxes. Something that you're super passionate about. So uh, yeah, medical scribe is a good one, and I'm always jealous of people that had that experience under their belt, because I also think that it becomes super helpful when you're actually in medical school and in your clinical rotations and stuff, getting used to like writing notes and all that. But anyways, yeah, that I agree. That's a really good experience. But so, and the other thing that I'd like to mention in terms of extracurriculars, um, people tend to like stretch themselves a bit too thin sometimes. And what, white coat? Wait, what do you mean? Um, oh, you mean like